Hey guys, we got performing function operations today. That's performing function operations. When you see the word operations in math, usually you're talking about four things: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and that's what we're doing today. All right, operations on functions. If you have two functions, f and g, you're allowed to do the four basic operations on them. You can add the functions together, which means you technically just add them. So like, let's say that's f of x is 5x and g of x is x plus 2. You can actually add the 5x and the x plus 2 and get a new function, which we call, hilariously, f plus g of x, 6x plus 2. You can also subtract them. So you can subtract f of x, which is 5x, minus x plus 2, and you would get 4x minus 2, which is a new function, which is f minus g of x. You can multiply them. You just distribute right there, 5x squared plus 10x. And of course, lastly, you can divide them, just put function f on top of function g, and you got it. Now, one thing they're gonna have you do besides that is also find some values and tell what the domains are. Let me tell you about domain on the next slide. The domains, and when you combine functions, when you add them, subtract them, multiply, or divide them, the domain is the x value of the domains of both f and g. So you're gonna look at the domain of f and the domain of g. Everything that's in both domains is in the domain of the function after the operation. There's one extra thing you gotta think about. If the quotient, obviously quotient means divide, you cannot have you cannot have a 0 in your denominator. So you may have one extra part of your domain there, and I'll show you that when we get there in just a second. Okay, first one here right here says, let f of x be 3 on the square root of x, and g of x be negative 10 on the square root of x. Find f plus g and state the domain. And then evaluate the sum when x is 4. So they're asking me for f plus g of x. So I'm going to add function f plus function g. Oops, I didn't need square root right there. Which is that. And you remember, you're allowed to add square roots as long as you just add the coefficients. So that's what I get. Now the domain of a square root, remember square roots must be positive. Sorry about that cough. So the domain of the first one, x has to be greater than or equal to 0. Of g of x, x has to be greater than 0. So the domain for the f plus g, the domain is going to be x has to be greater than or equal to 0. You can also write it like this if you want to, 0 to forever as an interval. That's how you write the domain. And then it says find the sum when x is 4. So I'm just going to plug 4 into that final answer I got. Except we don't need x, so I'm going to put 4 right there. Come on now. I'm going to put 4. Obviously, the square root of 4 is 2, so negative 7 times 2 is negative 14. So 3 answers on that problem, all right? F plus g of x, that's the new function. What's the domain? And then plug in the 4. Let's look at another one. This time it's f minus g. So here's function f, there's function g. Find f minus g. Now, when you do f minus g, you got to be a little more careful because I'm going to do 3x cubed minus 2x squared plus 5 minus the whole thing. So you need to put a parentheses around that because that minus sign applies to everything in there. All right, so let's go ahead and distribute that minus sign, make things a bit easier. So if I distribute that minus sign, it's a negative x cubed plus 3x squared minus 4x plus 2. And let's see here, it gives me 2x cubed plus x squared minus 4x and a plus 7. Okay, and again, state the domain. The domain, go back to the beginning. Basically, domain is this, and I will tell you this more about this tomorrow, but if there is not a fraction or a radical, the domain is always all real numbers. There's no restrictions here. That's all reals, that's all reals. What do they both have? They both have all reals. Or you can also write it this way as an interval. So there's f minus g, there's the domain. Then let's say what's the value when x is negative 2. Okay, so I'm going to take the negative 2, I'm going to plug it in for all the x's. This, I'm going to work that out. That's going to be negative 8. It's going to be negative 16 right there. That's a plus 4. That's a plus 8 and a plus 7. Let's see, 15, 19. That's going to be 3. All right, so there we go. 3 answers again. Find the f minus g, tell the domain, and evaluate for the number. 2 more slides. All right. F of x is x squared. G of x is square root of x. Find f times g, then evaluate. Okay, so f times g of x, first of all, I'm going to take the x squared and multiply it times the square root of x. And guys, that's all you can do. All right, you can't multiply something inside with something outside a radical. So that's the first answer. Then it says state the domain. Now here's a little bit tricky. The first one right here, x squared, all real numbers. There's not a radical, there's no fraction, so it's all reals. This time there is a radical. Radicals must be positive or zero. So I'm looking for what they both have. The domain, what do they both have? This has everything. This has everything bigger than zero. So what do they have in common? Everything bigger than zero. Okay, you can write it that way, or you can do this again, interval, whichever way you want. So there's your domain. Then we want the value in x is 9. So I'm going to plug in 9. The notation, I haven't really done this, but the notation really looks like that. So it would be 9 squared times the square root of 9. 9 squared is 81. Square root of 9 is 3. Everybody knows 81 times 3 is 243. And you got it. Let's go one more. I bet you guess what the next slide is. It's probably going to be division. It is. Okay, so let f of x be 6x, g of x be x 3/4. Find f divided by g. The function part's the easiest part to find. You just got to put function f on top of function g. So I'm going x over x to the 3/4 power. And that's probably good enough right there. That's f over g, first answer. To the domain, it's where it gets a little tricky. The domain of this one is all reals. The domain of this one, though, because it's an even root, remember, bottom is a root, top is a power. Because it's an even root, x has to be greater than or equal to 0. So usually I would say, okay, what do they have in common? This is everything. This is everything greater than 0, but it's also on the bottom of the fraction, it's the denominator, which means you cannot have a 0 down there. So my domain is not x is greater than or equal to 0. It's just flat out x is greater than 0 because you can't have a 0 in your denominator. All right, then it says let's plug in 16. So if I do f over g of 16, I'm going to plug a 16 into the x on the top and also a 16 to the x on the bottom. Now on the top, 6 times 16, everybody knows it's 96. On the bottom, I'm doing bottom is a root, top is the power. The 4 through the 16 is 2. And it's to the third power. 2 to the third power is 8. So 96 over 8 would be, let's see, 10. I think that's 12. If I remember multiplication tables correctly, it's 12, which it is. All right. Not that bad. The one thing I have to think about tomorrow is going to be your domain for sure. We'll work on that the most tomorrow in class, so we'll get it just fine. I'll see you then. Bye.